My name is Klaus. I'm from Austria. And, what I do for a living is I help large organizations to improve their business agility. And there's this word, business agility. You can also find it in my title, Why Agile Teams Have Nothing to Do with Business Agility. So, what is the talk about? Well, I'd like to share a story with you in the end. It's a story about an organization, and this company wanted to improve their time to market. They were kind of lame on the market. Projects took way too long to finish, and there was the thing that they were only reactive. They wanted to be more proactive. The other thing is they wanted to exploit opportunities on the market. They were just too slow to do that. And, I think everybody knows these buzzwords like blockchain, Internet of Things, digitization. And they were like, well, there is change happening around us. We somehow need to be prepared for this. And they were like, well, there are solutions. Let's go agile, right? So if we are having an agile organization, we can address all these topics. No big deal. Great. So they started an agile journey with roughly 600 people, right? How did they do it? Well, they were like, one important thing is that we need to reorganize our organization so that we have cross-functional teams. I think everybody knows cross-functional teams here, right? Cross-functional teams, it's all about having all the knowledge in the team so that teams can deliver without dependencies. They don't have to wait for other teams. They can just deliver stuff, and that's, of course, good when it comes to time to market. So first step, cross-functional teams. What else? They were also like, okay, we need to organize our teams by product. So one team is only working on one product. Again, not a bad idea, right? Because if one team is only working on one product, we create focus, and again, we eliminate dependencies. Good thing. All good when it comes to improving time to market. And the other thing I kind of liked in this organization, they were like, let's not be too dogmatic when it comes to the framework that we're using. So it's not about the agile method, it's more about, okay, we set some requirements, and within the requirements, the teams can do whatever they want. So what were these requirements? Number one, very important, visualization of the work, right? So they were like, it's highly important that each team visualizes the stuff they are working on, and of course also their problems. So whenever someone comes to the team, they immediately see what they are working on and they see the problems. Good thing to do. The other thing is they wanted to establish fast feedback loops, daily stand-up meetings. The teams, they need to coordinate very, very fast. Also, nice thing. And, of course, we need an improvement loop. So they were like, each and every team has at least to do retrospectives so that we are constantly improving over time. And they were also like, okay, we somehow need to quantify whether teams are improving or not, so they also set up measurements. So they measured lead time and throughput. And if you are in Agile, you probably think like, awesome, they really got it. Because no matter which Agile textbook you open, that's what you need to do, right? Cross-functional teams, structured by product, everything is just awesome here. How was the transformation done? The first thing they did is they set up a 1.5-year transformation project. Can you already see the irony a little bit? I mean, in the end, it's exactly my kind of humor, yeah? We become agile by setting up a waterfall project. But okay, that's one thing. But we can talk about this a little bit later, right? So the first thing is, okay, let's set up this transformation project. What was in this transformation project? Well, 600 employees, they need some basic training. They need some basic agile training because they need to understand what it means. They were like, agile is totally not about practices. Agile is about the mindset. Have you heard something like this? It's all about establishing an Agile mindset, because the mindset, that's what matters. It's not about the practices, it's really the mindset. Mindset is important, yeah? So they set up this one-day mindset training, and then they were like, mindset checked, yeah? All right, good. So 600 people got Agile mindset training, nice. Then they carried out this transformation, cross-functional product teams. So in the end, what you do, you throw people up in the air, and they land somewhere else in the organization, right? So reorganization was done. What else? Agile was kind of rolled out on every team. So the Scrum teams, again, received some training. Very important. There are Scrum Masters, product owners, and so on. They all need training. And for the Kanban teams, they need to design the system. So they ran a couple of system design workshops, so where the teams came up with their Kanban systems. What else? In the initial phase, this whole transformation kind of thing was supported by roughly 16 external coaches. It's good if you are a consulting company, because it's quite a lot of billable days, right? And I mean, if you see the program, you need these Agile coaches, right? Because you need to do all this training, mindset training, and then the Scrum training, and the Kanban training, and you also help in facilitating, and we're talking about 600 people, so that's some teams, right? So you need help. What they also did, they built up internal knowledge, which makes sense, right? So 11 internal coaches were built up because they were like, okay, we don't want, what we often see when external coaches are here, yeah, everything is working. And then the external consultants are leaving, and the people are like, yeah, now we can switch back to normal. Yeah, you don't want to be normal here again, right? So if you invest this kind of money. And yeah, so this was actually what they did. After 12 months, it was, they were like, okay, where are we? And that's not my wording, that's their wording. They were like, 80% of our teams are fully transformed after a year. I was like, okay, interesting, nice wording, kind of. So when I ever hear this transformation kind of thing, it somehow reminds me of Star Trek. Are there some Star Trek guys in here? Yeah, a couple of. Great, great, great. So we know it, right? It reminds me of Star Trek, transformation.
We are the Borg. Your culture will adapt to service us. Resistance is futile.
That's how it is. Right? So this is what I hear when I hear transformation. But that's, of course, only me, right? So they were fully assimilated, basically, to the new Agile culture. And what does this mean? Well, in the end, teams were working with boards. That's good. So no matter which team you were visiting, you saw boards, which is a good stuff, right? Then the teams were also doing the stand-up meetings, the retrospectives, and they were capturing metrics, which is also very good. And they also did some surveys, so they asked teams kind of, how is it feeling in the new Agile culture? And they were like, assimilation is good. So communication and collaboration totally improved, which is a good thing, right? So this was the status roughly after 12 months. So one could say everything's on track, right? However, teams were not only capturing metrics. Capturing metrics is one thing. The other thing is interpreting metrics, right? So if there's metrics all over the place, they were like, okay, let's take a look at it. How are we actually improving? I will show you some charts here, which are somehow representative for the teams. So this is, for instance, a chart of a Scrum team. On the x-axis, so that's a velocity, sprint velocity chart. You probably know this, right? On the x-axis, you have the time, the sprints, basically, and on the y-axis, you have the story points, I think they're called, the story points, and you could plug your results in here. And the expected result was something like this. We start very low in terms of velocity, but then there's a steep increase, and over time, as we're doing retrospectives, we continuously improve. That's what they were like, okay, that's what we want to see. And yeah, sounds cool in the end. What was the actual result? It was like this. So there was this increase in the beginning, but then performance was going down over time. It's not a good thing, right? So this was the Scrum chart. And this is somehow representative for multiple teams, yeah? So let's put up a Kanban chart. That's lead time or cycle time, yeah? So on the y-axis, again, you have the time, the work items, and on the on the x-axis and on the y-axis, you have the time it takes to finish a work item. And, well, the expected result was to see something like this. We want to see lead time going down, right? Because that's why we do all this stuff. What was the actual result? Something like that. So it basically flattened out, so you don't see any improvement in this chart. So this was kind of interesting. I mean, they really invested a shitload of money, and that's the result you're getting, right? Not too good. So the problem with these charts is it's hard to compare because they did this reorganization, so there was no Kanban team or Scrum team before, so you cannot compare the data, whether it's good or bad. It's hard to say. However, there was one chart in the organization which we could actually compare, and that's a good thing. That's this one, time to market of initiatives. You know, that was basically a project organization, so they were doing projects, but when you're Agile, you don't do projects, you do initiatives. It's the same. But still, we had the project data, and the result was like this. Time to market of projects or initiatives was going up. That was the reason why they said, okay, we need to change. And then they invested this millions of euros to see something like this. Guess what the actual result was? It wasn't like this, it was like that. And that's really not good what we see here. Because what we see is time to market was getting worse. They invested, I don't know how much money and made it worse. That's not a good thing, right? So they were like, what the phenomenon is going on here? Yeah, they were completely puzzled. And well, that was the reason why when I got the first phone call from them, they heard me somewhere speak about local optimization versus global optimization, dependencies, and so on and so on. And they were like, Klaus, take a look. Maybe there's something like this going on in our organization. And at this point in time, I basically had the same information you have now. So this was the story they told me. And I was like, yeah, I can take a look, of course. I mean, that's what I do for a living. So they invited me, and what I did, I visited some teams. And the good thing is, you could easily start a conversation with the teams because there were boards all over the place. Each and every team, they had their own board. So that's nice. And these boards, they basically looked like this. So that's a very simplified version, right? So we have something like a backlog. That's what we are committing to finish next, and we are doing some development magic. Maybe that's multiple columns here, and then we are done. Yeah? This could be also a sprint board from a Scrum team. So the backlog is something like the product backlog. The next column is the sprint backlog. Then we are in sprint, and then we are done. Does it make sense? Yeah? So that's what I saw on almost every team. And there was another thing I noticed, this one. So there are, of course, different ways of expressing this, but there was always a place for external waiting. This means this team can no longer work on a work item. They need to wait for another team. I think a lot of you guys know situations like this. Yeah? So what does this mean? Well, if there's something like external waiting, in the end, it means there needs to be somewhere in this organization another board from another team. And whenever team 1 is waiting for something, this creates demand for another team, team 2. The demand goes into the backlog. They work on it. When it's finished, they can continue, or team 1 can continue to work, right? So that's the pattern, what I was supposed to see, and that's the pattern what I actually saw. So yeah, we were waiting. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Let's draw some kind of dependency chart. So how often, with how many teams is this happening? And the situation was something like this. And here you see, I think, 8 teams, and we're talking about 600 people. So the entire chart was a little bit, you could see some more lines on the entire chart. So each team was waiting for another team, and they couldn't continue to work. And now there's definitely a question, why are there so many dependencies? They did this reorganization, remember? Cross-functional teams. And one team is only working on one product. But still, we are waiting for other teams. There's still a whole lot of dependencies all over the place. Where do they come from? Well, there are more reasons. One reason is, of course, there's one thing. One team was working on only one product. Fair enough. But you needed multiple teams that are working on one product. Does it make sense? So one team is working on one product, but you need multiple teams that are working on the same product. Of course, this creates dependencies when you think in team structures, because these teams, they have dependencies because they're working on the same product. The other thing is, the products were not completely independent. And I think if you are working in a bigger company, and big, it doesn't have to be too big. I don't know, it starts with 200 people maybe, or even less. You have product dependencies. When you change something in this product, you need to change something in that product, in this product, and in that product. So there are dependencies among the products, right? And the other thing is, we're talking about 600 people. I personally have never ever seen an organization with more than 30 people without dependencies. Yeah? So whenever I think about dependencies, there pops up a picture in my mind. I'm always thinking of a keyboard. Let's assume our organization is a keyboard and we are in the writing business. So what we do, we write letters. All right? Good. So let's organize our organization. We have team 1, 2, 3, 4. Team 1 is only pressing the number buttons. Team 2, QWER, Team 3, ASDF, and so on and so on. And now, there's the customer, and he wants us to deliver a love letter. So we need to think of how we can do this, right? When we're talking about the company with 600 people, you probably have more teams. And your organization looks pretty much like this. For each and every freaking key on your keyboard, there's a team responsible for it. Yeah, you have a G team, an H team. Each and every organization, of course, needs an A team. Without A team, you're basically screwed. Yeah. So, right. And now let's assume we are optimizing these teams. And let's imagine it's working. It's really working. We have the best F team on this planet. You know, when they start hitting the F button, smoke is coming out of the keyboard. And it's not only working for the F button, the entire organization, we are just the best key button pressers ever. It's just one smoke that's coming out of the keyboard. How much faster can we finish our letter? Well, not too much, right? So the point is, when it comes to writing a letter or using a keyboard, it's not so important that you hit the keys very fast. It's way more important that you hit the right key at the right time. This could be even a little bit slower, but it's way more important to hit the right key at the right time, right? So if we transfer this thinking to organization, then it's not so important that each and every team is working very, very fast. high-performing teams. I never got this concept. It's way more important that we make sure that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. That's where performance kicks in, to make sure that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time, right? And of course, I'm not smart enough to come up with something like this. There's a guy called Russell Eckhoff who said that the performance of a system is not the sum of its parts. It's the result of its interactions. Yeah? So it's not the sum of the parts. If you take your organization apart in all the parts, you end up at the team somewhere. And if you optimize all the teams, you're optimizing the sum of the parts. But that's not the point. You need to optimize the interactions. What does this mean? We could rephrase this for agile organizations. We could say agility of an organization has nothing to do with having a lot of agile teams. Agility of an organization means that you have agile interactions between the teams. So we need to focus on the interactions and not on the single individual team performance. And this was the first thing I noticed in this organization. They were completely not thinking about interactions. They had a bunch of agile teams, and that's it. So the first problem I discovered is no management of interactions between teams. I will stay a little bit in the problem mode, and then I will switch to the solution mode. Okay? So first problem. What else? When I was talking to the teams, this was the board that I was seeing, right? And I asked questions. I challenged them for, you see this develop here? And I was like, okay, that's good. So when your development is over, you're done. They were like, yes, that's what the board says. But I'm like, yes, and is it in reality also like this? So the customer is completely happy when development is done. And they were like, well, no. Of course, after development, we have to do some integration. Okay, that's good information to have. So let's draw another column on this board, waiting for integration. But then when everything is integrated, we're done. They were like, no, because of course there's some acceptance testing going on. Okay, that's good information to have, so let's come up with another column on the board. But after acceptance testing, the customer is completely happy. And they were like, well, no, because of course we need to release it. That's good information to have. So let's draw some more columns on the board. So the process was a little bit longer than expected. Then I tried to find out, or I asked, how long does it take? And they were like, well, integration is done on a monthly basis, and 4 times a year we're doing the acceptance test and the releasing. We want to improve time to market. Can you see something already here? Yeah, so there's another lever, maybe, in our system somewhere. But I didn't stop asking here. I was also like, okay, there's this backlog, so after the backlog, next, and you start developing. And they were like, no, of course it's not easy like this. Because you need to know, this is only the development backlog. Good to know. So if there's a development backlog, there's some other backlog somewhere. Yes, because of course, we need to do some analysis work before we start to develop. Okay, fair enough, good to know. So you do this analysis and then you start developing and everybody's happy. And they were like, well, no. In the end, our process looks more like this. So we have something like a pool of new ideas. What we are doing is we are doing a rough triage, can we work on it or not? Those who got through this triage, we are writing a rough concept. This rough concept is waiting for a steering committee, and then we are writing a detailed concept, which is again waiting for approval, and then we hopefully start to develop somewhen. That's good information to have, right? Because if we zoom out a little bit, the process looks like this. Yeah? Now we can again ask, how long does it take? And the result was something like this. On a monthly basis, they are doing the triage. 4 times a year, they are waiting for so they are approving the rough concepts, and only twice a year, the detailed concepts are being approved. That's really good information to have. Again, remember, we want to improve time to market. We want to improve time to market, and what was their solution? There's development. Let's make them agile, and we are so fucking agile, you can't believe it. We are the best. I'm not sure. I'm a little bit unsure here, yeah? So maybe what you see here is agile software development. Fair enough. But this has nothing to do with business agility. This organization is lame on the market like before. So it's totally no change. And this was basically my, let's say, second finding I had with this organization. There was totally no end-to-end management of the entire value creation chain. They zoomed into a tiny part and said, wow, you are agile now and everything is great. Well, yeah, that was my second finding. What else? There's another typical board. And what I noticed on this board, there were numbers on it. For those guys who are using Kanban, these are WIP limits, work in progress or process limits, so they don't start a whole bunch of work, they only start some work, and then they finish this work before they start new work. That's a good thing. We didn't see explicit work in progress limits for Scrum teams, but even Scrum teams, they limit the work in process at least on a timely scale. So for 2 weeks, they only start a certain amount of work, that's their sprint, and they finish this stuff first before they start new work. That's kind of the same like a work in progress limit, right? And, well, WIP limits are just awesome. There's a whole lot of theory behind it, and with WIP limits, you can heal everything in your organization because time to market is going down, switching overhead is, of course, going down, your predictability is going up, you reduce risks, and your system stability is going up. So work in progress limits are just awesome. And even there's the thing, cycle time is going down, remember? So they are doing this limitation. So they are limiting their work in progress. However, cycle time was going up in their case. Remember, time to market was going up. But here, the slide says if you are limiting your work in progress, it's supposed to be going down. So where's this coming from? Well, there is, let's say, a fine print when it comes to WIP limits. And I think maybe 95% of all the organizations don't know the fine print of work in progress limits. And the fine print is this. The point is you need to limit these items in your system where you want to see the benefits. So it's not about setting random limits in your organization. So there is a whole bunch of positive aspects when you're limiting your work, but you need to limit these entities where you want to see the benefit. What does this mean? This organization was working on initiatives, projects, right? What they did, because they are agile, which makes sense, they split it into epics. So each initiative was split into epics. The epic was split into stories, and the story was split into tasks. That's how they worked here. Yeah? All right, so we want to improve time to market of our initiatives. What do we need to limit? Maybe, yeah? We need to limit the initiatives, of course, because we need to limit this entity where we want to see the benefits. What did they do? They started their agile journey on a team level. I, as a team, what can I limit? Exactly. Maybe tasks and stories, not more, right? So that's a little bit of a problem. So don't be surprised if you don't see time to market going down, if you don't limit time to market elements. So they were basically limiting their stories and tasks, but teams were still working on 1,000 projects in parallel. Surprise, surprise, time to market of projects is not going down. Where do we have access to strategy or to initiatives and projects, maybe not on a team level. That's what I would call the strategic portfolio management. We need to have something like a strategic portfolio management in place. That's where we can actually limit the time to market elements. And this was also not in place in this organization. And this was my third finding, I think. There's one more thing I want to share with you. That's what I call the road of nowhere. So, kind of interesting. So the whole journey started with, we want to improve time to market. You remember, we want to be proactive and blockchain and all this stuff, we need to be aware of. So time to market, that's what we want to improve. What they did to improve time to market, they built the first derivative. This was, we need to go agile. So the solution for this is become agile. Now, they built the second derivative of being agile. What does this mean? Well, we need agile teams doing agile methods, right? What was the result? The result was that the entire organization was discussing about stuff like, is the product owner allowed to join the stand-up meeting? And I'm like, what's going on here? You guys want to improve time to market, and you're discussing who's allowed to join a meeting according to a random framework. And I'm like, you're totally losing what you're actually optimizing for. And I see this way too often that you build these derivatives, right? And the actual goal, that the thing what you want to achieve is no longer a topic. We're only talking about rules and, can we do this? Is this allowed? And so, not a good thing was completely happening here. The other thing was, that's also kind of interesting, they were like, that's where we currently are. We are an ugly square, but we want to be a shiny star. So that's our desired state. We want to have this time to market and everything. So what did they do? I already talked about it. They were like, okay, let's come up with a transformation plan. Let's define, like a waterfall process, how would you get from an ugly star, an ugly square, thank you, to a beautiful star. Let's come up with a plan for it. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The point is, agility starts with the change process. You need to set up an agile change process already. So agility is not about introducing agile with a waterfall process. You need to start it immediately. And the other thing is, whenever you come up with a transformation plan like this, the first thing, at least I read in these plans, is we need to focus on the org chart. So the first thing in almost every transformation is reorganization. What you do, you basically throw all people up in the air and they land somewhere else in the organization, right? So Paul, you join the team from Peter, and Tomasz, you go to the team from Maria, and then when everybody's just sitting on the right place, it's working. You just need to sit on the right place, then it's working, cross-functional. The Spotify model, I love it, right? So just need to sit on the right place, and we don't have teams. We have squads and tribes and guilds and whatever nice words, and then it's working. I don't think so. There's one thing, which is the organizational structure, but there's another thing, what I would call the operational structure. The operational structure is we have something like an idea, a vision, a customer order, whatever. This comes into our organization. Then it's somehow rooted to our organization, and in the end, we created value for our customer. That's what I call the operational structure. What does your customer care of? Is your customer interested in where your people are sitting around, or is your customer interested in generating value? So the point is, don't copy all these organizational structure. This doesn't make any sense. Start with the operational structure. You need to deliver value to your customer, and you need to be aware of how you're doing it. When you see that there's problem in delivering value, the result might be that you're changing your organizational structure, but that's a result because we are aware of that we are having this problem. So start with the operational structure and not with the organizational structure. And the point is, you cannot do this in a waterfallish transformation project because you don't know in the beginning when you need to change the organizational structure. And this was my finding number 4, a waterfall change process for an agile journey. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And well, these were the 4, let's say, findings I had in this organization. There were a couple of more, but I think that's enough for an hour time slot. Yeah, so these are the 4 problems. Now, let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about the first one, no management of interactions between teams, right? Remember, it was this slide. There were these teams, and they all had these dependencies. And yeah, what did we do? Well, most of the dependencies were because multiple teams were working on one product. So what we did, we basically found out which team is working on what product, and we built product systems. So we zoomed out from the team level. We basically locked the teams that are working on the same product in a room for a day, and we were asking the question, how are you guys actually delivering value together? Yeah? And they came up with a system where they optimized the product. The point is, do not optimize organizational structure. A team is an organizational structure. You need to optimize value delivery. You need to find out how are you actually generating value, get the guys together who are delivering this value, and they need to come up with a system where they can manage all their dependencies. So the output was something like this. Now we had boards and systems in our organization where we could manage the flow of a product and not manage the flow of a team, right? Even here, we see this box, external waiting. But when we're talking about external waiting here, we are not waiting for another team because this is already handled here. When we are talking about waiting here, we're waiting for another product. So we reduced quite a lot of dependencies. We were also talking about agile interactions. Having a system like this is no interaction. That's a dead object. That's a board somewhere on the wall. So you need to get the right people together, and you do this with establishing feedback loops. So what we did, we established product stand-ups, right? So teams got together, so representatives of the teams that were working on the same product, we got them together, and they were having a stand-up meeting and discussing their dependencies, and they are solving the dependencies in this meeting. What else? We also did retrospectives, but not only on a team level, on an inter-team level. I see it too often that in Agile organization, each team is doing their retrospective and they are improving, but we are not improving value delivery. So we did retrospectives on a product level. The result was something like this. The number of dependencies was going down because product 1 and product 2 and product 3, we had a system for them. We set up feedback loops and the dependencies were being managed. So number of dependencies was going down, but there are still dependencies there, the inter-product dependencies. What did we do with them? Well, that's what I would call operational portfolio management. We basically defined systems where we manage the different products. You know, there's the team, there's one product, there's multiple products on an operational portfolio system. And then you manage the dependencies there. And it works again like team to product to product portfolio. You send representatives from each product to a stand-up meeting, and you're having retrospectives, and you're improving your portfolio. Yeah? So that's what we did for the interaction part. That's how we managed interactions. We zoomed out from the organizational structure, and we focused on value delivery. Number 2, no end-to-end management of the value creation chain. Well, the problem is I only have one slide for this. That's this one. Yeah. that's a very short explanation what was being done. But to get to this slide, it took 1.5 years. So what you see is the result, but when it comes to zooming out, it's a lot about change. So what can you see on this board? Well, remember the very long process in the beginning. We tried to shorten the process. So we were only having a rough concept or only writing a rough concept. This rough concept was waiting for approval, and then it was already dev ready. Yeah? And the important thing here is this waiting for approval. This meeting is not taking place, twice a year. It's taking place every second week. So it's a bi-weekly meeting. And that's another thing when it comes to agility. It's a whole lot about the replenishment process. I see so many organizations which are having something like a yearly budget. Yeah. So what you do is you define on the beginning of the year what is being done until the end of the year. And then, okay, we do some agile magic in between, but this has nothing to do with business agility, right? So you need to think about your replenishment process, how often you actually start your projects. A fiscal year is totally not agile when it comes to business agility. Again, it's maybe agile software development, fair enough. So we basically brought business on board. That's what was going on here. So this was an organization which was really like, okay, here's development and here's business. And with a system like this, you get it together. And again, we set up feedback loops. I mean, the feedback loops, they were already being set up because there was basically the operative portfolio management. But the business people joined our conversation. So we were having, stand-up meetings and retrospectives together with the business. And that's how we tried to manage the end-to-end flow in this organization. As I said before, it's only one slide, but there's really hard work behind it because it's all about change process. Maybe they don't want to talk to you. Yeah? That's the problem here. All right, no strategic portfolio management. This was problem number 3. I find that this one is usually easier to solve than the agilizing, let's say, the entire value stream. In the end, you just need a couple of people here. So when it comes to the whole value stream, you need 500 people. But here, when it comes to setting up an agile strategic portfolio management, you just need top management. And if there's something like a sense of urgency and they see, okay, it makes sense that we need to change, then it's usually quite easy to get their buy-in. And so what we did, we built a strategic portfolio board. It looked like this. We're thinking of, okay, what are we doing? And they were like, okay, we are making money. That's what our organization is doing. And we are investing money in stuff like, automation and so on, reorganizations. Yeah. And then they were like, okay, what's our strategy actually? They built something like a strategy, information radiator in front of the board. They derive business metrics out of the strategy. And then, we came up with a board. And the point here is, whenever you start one of these work items, you need to define what you think, what kind of business metric you are turning. And if you know what kind of business metric you're turning, you're paying to, or you are aligned to the strategy. And that's actually a very good thing. And here in the end of the board, the last 3 columns, I think they're also very important. It's all about outcome and not output. So we totally tried to get away from counting how many features we are shipping or how many features we're shipping. It's more like what's the impact that we're making on the market. So you see after the in development, it's not the done column, but it's a column called measure success. So we put it on the market and then we are measuring the success. Did the business metric actually turn how we want them to turn or not? If not, we need to tweak the feature. Yeah, so we want to achieve impact. This was another, hard work of convincing, because it's not so straightforward. Because if you are used to output thinking, outcome thinking, we're talking about economics, and that's maybe, especially for technic geek guys, not the easiest thing, but it's really worth doing it. And of course, you need to set up feedback loops also on this level. So the board of directors was doing stand-up meeting with their direct reports, and they were having a stand-up meeting. They were actually doing it on a weekly basis, but that's another story. So in the beginning, they were like, okay, let's do it 4 times a year. But after the first stand-up, they were like, we should meet next week again, right? So if you really try to set up something like this, you need to have a good frequency of doing it. All right, and the waterfall-like change process. So this could be a talk on its own, so I only have a lousy quote and not more, but I think it's really important. So when it comes to, an agile journey, be the change that you want to see. I think that's what we need to do, right? Of course, that's not from me, that's from Gandhi. Yeah, so be authentic. Do practice what you preach. Eat your own dog food. Drink your own champagne. Oh, that sounds weird, but you know what I mean, right? So, be the change that you wish to see. If you want to become agile, your change process has to be agile. It's easy like this. We didn't do it this organization didn't do it, unfortunately. So when I take a look at what I was talking about, so I'm trying to wrap up already. When I take a look at what I was talking about, I think I can say something like business agility has really nothing to do, or business agility is definitely no team sport. Business agility is corporate sport. Yeah? So if you want to improve your business agility, you are screwed when you start on a team level or when you only do stuff on a team level. This won't help. But then I think there's another question popping up. So if it's no team sport, where in an organization can I apply these agile ideas if there's more than the team, right? So there's a model, what I call the flight levels, which actually help me to have a conversation with organizations to find out where in the organization they need to do their changes. So it's not about implementing the flight levels, it's about starting a conversation, right? So what does flight level mean? Flight level is a term from aviation. The higher you're flying, right, the higher your flight level is, and the higher the flight level, you see different things. You see a lot of stuff, but you don't see a lot of details. If you're flying very low, you see a lot of details, but your vision is somehow restricted. So that's what I tried to use for the flight levels. So you can fly on flight level 1 in an organization. Flight level 1 is the operational level, the team, people who are really doing work, right? If you have a team, you can agilize your teams, right? If you have more than only one team, there are probably more than only one. There's probably more than only one flight level 1 system in your organization. And when I talk about flight level 1 system, it's completely agnostic in terms of method. So no matter whether they are doing Scrum or, Kanban, it doesn't matter, right? But we can do some agile magic on the team level. That's flight level 1. Often it's the case that we need more than one team to deliver value to our customers. And that's exactly where flight level 2 kicks in. Flight level 2 is end-to-end coordination, hopefully across the entire value creation chain. On flight level 2, nobody's actually working. It's purely in terms of responsible for coordination only. So if flight level 1 is the single key of a keyboard, flight level 2 is your keyboard. On flight level 2, you make sure that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. And of course, you can connect flight level 2 with flight level 1. Yeah? So flight level 2 is end-to-end coordination of the value creation chain, and often an organization has more than only one value creation chain. Maybe you have multiple products, multiple projects in your organization. Then, of course, you can see multiple flight level 2 systems in your systems in your organization. And often it's the case that these products or these flight level 2 systems, there are dependencies. Then you build an operational portfolio management. That's what I've shown you before. You basically, build a system for multiple flight level 2 systems, and you manage the inter-product dependencies on this system. Often, not often, organizations also need to fly one level higher. That's what I would call the strategic portfolio management. And in the strategic portfolio management, it's really about aligning the work in the entire organization on your strategy. And the point is, you also limit the number of projects and initiatives that's going on in your organization. That's the job of flight level 3. Align the work to the strategy and limit the work in your organization. Of course, you can connect the flight levels, and in large organizations, there's often multiple flight level 3 systems going on. For instance, I was working for a company who was situated in Germany, and they had a site in India, in China, in Hungary, and in North America. And we came up with different flight level 3 system on each site. But of course, we had a common strategy for the entire organization. So you can also build in some hierarchies on this level. So this is basically the flight levels. And for me, again, it's not about implementing this. For me, it's about starting a conversation, right? So what's the problem we are trying to solve, and where's the lever that we need to pull to see what we actually want to see? I wouldn't say flight level 3 is 3 times more important than flight level 1. It's not about better or worse. They solve a different purpose, right? So flight level 1, it's all about delivery. When your teams are not delivering, you can build the best strategic systems on the planet, teams still won't deliver, right? On the other hand, if it comes to improve time to market, you can agilize all your teams, and you won't see time to market going down, because what you need to do, you need to limit the work on the strategic level. So it's about having this conversation. What is the problem we're trying to solve, and where in the organization do we need to pull the right lever to achieve it? And that's how I would see the flight levels. Does it make sense somehow? Yeah? Good. So I have 2 more slides, and then we're done. The story was about an organization that was already on a journey. So how would I start from scratch? So if there's nothing going on already, so they were already doing their team stuff. Well, if you start from scratch, I think there are 2 approaches. One approach is for consulting companies. So if you are a consulting company and you don't care too much about the outcome, so it's not about improvement, and if you don't care about results, and actually if you don't want to change a lot, you should choose this approach. This sounds somehow weird, but there's really a market for something like this. We want to become agile, but nothing needs to change. That's very important, right? So yeah, good idea, start on the team level. Good for consulting companies, you earn a shitload of money, because you need to train all these organizations, perfect. Don't fly on higher flight levels. Sub-optimize, because you don't see the right result now, so you can sell more training, right? That's a good thing. So that's a safe way to burn loads of money, I think. Yeah. If you are more like an economically minded organization and you really care about the outcome, and it's really about changing and improving something, it's often not too hard, because in the beginning, you actually need one agile team, and that's top management. Yeah, bring top management on board. And when I say bring top management on board, I really mean it. They need to become agile. Because what I see too often in organizations, there is this top management where they say, yes, our organization is becoming agile. Do it. Yeah, has nothing to do with us. It has a whole lot to do with top management. Practice what you preach, right? Be the change that you want to see. Act as a role model for your organization. Start on the top, hopefully with something like an strategic portfolio management, and then find out with the flight levels where in your organization you need to pull which lever so that, that you see the kind of improvement you want to see. And there's one more thing which I think, it's important for me. Really kill all these agile methods and frameworks. It's not about Kanban, it's not about Scrum, that's all, save less, more. It's not about, that's good for consulting companies. I'm actually running a consulting company. So that's good for consulting companies, but that's usually not good for your organization because what you're doing is you're installing somehow a solution and maybe it solves a problem that you actually don't have. So that's not a good thing. In the end, it's really about improving and really living agility. So in the end, what I think, it's about being best at getting better. And that's the core when it comes to agility. It never ends. And that's basically everything I wanted to say. Thank you.